my fellow Americans, are we reaping our harvest of greed? Have we built our house on sinking sand? Why are we being ugly Americans?
Welcome to Weekdays Live. This is CJ, host and founder of Holmes for Justice. And I apologize, I didn't tell you that I wouldn't be casting yesterday. I was doing some live streaming with with Julie, who presented her suspicious documents to the Board of Supervisors in Marin County. And it never even occurred to me to send out an email, so I apologize. I had it on the live stream, but you know that the next Weekdays live show would be today. But I will try to remember to send something out each day since people are looking for that. So we have a lot of news to catch up on. We've missed a day. It's amazing how much changes are occurring daily, and that's the good, bad part. It's hard to keep up sometimes, but there is movement, and that's really what we need to take advantage of. So just really briefly, an overview. We're going to be reviewing quick updates on the foreclosures, on the OCC, the Independent Foreclosure Review payments, what's going on with mortgage reform at the federal level. I want to take a few minutes specifically for you to focus on the real estate market, because there's so much coming out saying, oh, it's great, everything is over, and pending sales are up, so that means closes are going to be up. And I want you to look at some facts that I've collected on that. Then, of course, they're pushing again. Private hedge funds are pushing to privatize Fannie and Freddie. We need to understand some of the risks and the issues that are going on there. And then, of course, update on the bank crimes and lawsuits and rulings. And Iceland. We're going to pull in Iceland is having general elections, and it's real fascinating what is going on there. So let it be a lesson to all of us. You need to understand the constituents, and we need to understand the constituents in this country as we work for change. And then, of course, solutions. I want to focus on things that are happening. We call it the new economy movement. That's not my words. That's an article I'm going to share that discusses all the different things that are going on all over the country. And literally each one of us needs to, pick one or two things that we can get involved with. Nobody can do everything. But it's really exciting that there is such change and push and movement going on. And then there's a couple of ideas that just came to me from other contacts. I'm just sharing what people tell me and these good ideas. And I want to just put them out there for you. And then since Saturday, there were 3 stories, 3 situations people have talked to me about. One's about Tunisia, one's from Russia, and one's about from a person who used to work at the Federal Reserve. So these are hearsay stories, but I want to share them with you because this is the input that we're getting from everyone. And that is one of the powers of this show, that we can share with each other and we can keep each other up to date quickly. Let me do the research for you guys. Let me bring this news to you so you don't have to run out and go, gee, what's the Fed doing now? You can just tune in. I'm trying to stay right up to the minute on all of these issues. So foreclosures increased slightly in March, but they maintain the longer-term downtrend. So we'll see. We'll see. That's my answer to this. Here's a little graphic that they've got in this particular article. The number of mortgage homes per completed foreclosure. And then they've compared judicial foreclosure states and non-judicial. And you can see these graphs, how they've gone up and down. They've fairly, matched each other, the red being judicial, the green being non-judicial. And again, read the article. The fact of the matter is, nobody knows the future. And every one of us is working to turn those lines into zero. People should be keeping their homes and never, ever forget when anyone says, oh, they were liar loans and it was all the borrower's fault. They got into a loan they should never have gotten into. And the answer is that's not a correct analysis. They were cheater loans, and the banks cheated on every rule that was put out there to protect the homeowner. They cheated on the lenders. They cheated on the loans being affordable. They cheated on the fact that these loans would actually blow up. That's illegal. So let's focus on that. And I've heard myself say, and I haven't had a minute yet to do it, I want to list the ways the banks cheated, because that will help shift the mindset. And I know this for a fact because that happened yesterday. Yesterday at the submission of fraudulent documents to the Board of County, RIM Board of Supervisors, Julie had a friend there, and the friend said that she was so embarrassed. She had been buying into the myth that it was just these borrowers, and the borrowers were stupid and never should have done that. They're all bad. And then she discovered how the banks had been cheating, how they put out these loans intentionally to snag the people into this fraud. And now she's feeling really, really badly. So let's get like another 20 million people to hear the story, the correct version of this story. Then we'll get the movement and the change we need. Okay, here's something else where I'm going to just zip through these topics. This is from the Federal Reserve, and this is a press release. It was just released on Monday. And turns out, you remember the independent foreclosure review settlements the OCC had negotiated? Yeah, with 13 or 14 banks, but not these two. Not Goldman Sachs and not Morgan Stanley. And so turns out these two banks, lenders, are also going to be sending out checks. Guess who they're going to use to send them out? They're going to use Rust Consulting. Oh my goodness, same old payments, $300 to $125,000. And you'll definitely be able to still sue. They are not allowed to force the borrowers to, by cashing the check, they would sign a waiver. And, they talk about the checks that have been sent out. And down here, for any of you or your friends, family, neighbors, anybody that needs to contact about these checks, here's the Independent Foreclosure Review Payment Agreement that you can read for Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, which is separate from the other ones. And here's the phone number if you want to, Rust Consulting, the 888 number. If you have media inquiries, that was from the Federal Reserve. It's a press release. So let's call the Federal Reserve. We're media. I'm confident that some of you are probably already on the phone dialing the number. You go for it. I support you. Okay, and of course, here's a new article, also released on Monday. And I object to the title. The title is "The OCC Misses Another Conflict of Interest," and I think I would start writing these titles differently. I would say OCC intentionally allowed another conflict of interest. And so now we're talking about Rust Consulting. And of course, this particular entity has been used a lot. They've been sort of under the radar. They're the ones that are supposed to send out the notices for the independent foreclosure review. And if you recall, do you remember back when that was sent out, 2011 to early 2012, most of that mail looked like trash mail. It was intentional. We talked about that it would look like just junk mail and people would intentionally just throw it away. They had no idea that they might be throwing away a $125,000 check. And so you can put the blame right there on Rust Consulting. And of course, they talk about now that subsidiary has been sold to the VC, that's venture capital arm of Citigroup. No-brainer to me. It is completely corrupt, and I'm going to share a story about that later today. I'm telling you, we've been frogs in the pot. We've been sitting in here under the heel of the worst criminal enterprise on the planet, and they've been lying to us by using the media, telling us that we're the best on the planet, all those other people, they're horrible, and when they burn the American flag, they're just radicals, and when they call the United States the Great Satan, that's just, brain fever. Mark my words. These banksters have been out there. It's a huge criminal enterprise, and they've been killing the people in these other countries. Now we know the truth, and now we can understand why some of those countries have acted this way. So, mortgage reform is likely to pass the House in 2013. Here's the interesting thing. So there's legislation going on. They're talking about Fannie, Freddie, FHA. This is what you need to pay attention to. This paragraph states it all. The government-backed mortgages have accounted for more than 90% of the U.S. housing financing since 2008. And before that, it wasn't even close. Are you kidding? We never used FHA loans, almost never. Now it's almost 100% if anyone wants to borrow. And the reason, it says right here, the private mortgage market dried up. As housing recovers and government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie and Freddie, return to profitability, it's time to rely more heavily on the private sector, people are saying. Well, you know why it dried up? And this is what kills me. Here's a good article and a good chance to explain exactly why that mortgage market dried up, and it's because they lied. They lied about those mortgages to everybody on the planet. They went out and sold truly crap. They lied to everybody, saying these were excellent mortgages, prime mortgages, when they knew that they were subprime and probably already in default. And they sold these to the central banks too, by the way. They sold these everywhere. They've fed this seed of failure, of demise, into every nook and cranny of the planet. And now as they blow up, guess who's in charge? See, that's intentional. It's a clever, intentional plan. Let's create a bunch of toxic mortgages. Let's lie about their quality. Then let's send them out to everybody. Let's overload all the investors, including all the banks, all the pension funds, everybody with this crap. And then when it blows up, we win. Think about it. I'm thinking about it. So here's what they're saying now. I want to segue quickly into the real estate numbers, because you see articles, you're going to read them in your paper, you're going to hear about them. They're talking about prices are up. This is good. It's a good sign. Here's some reality check. Because I'd say, well, yes and no.
So what do you think? 9.3% sounds like a lot, but if you look at the bigger picture, we still have a long way to go to get back up to where we were in 2007. Will we get there?
Yeah, well, a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, that 9% number really doesn't even tell the whole story. You know, if you look over the last 3 months alone and annualize that rate, home prices are growing at about a 13% per year rate at this particular point in time. Across the board, every city in that 20-city index is up, and also seeing accelerated price growth. And now, as you pointed out, we have a long way to go to where we were in 2006, but I don't think that should be the goal. Remember, 2006 was a period of time where prices were inflated far beyond anything reasonable from a long-run standpoint, largely driven there, of course, by the complete collapse in credit standards in that lending market. Today, we're seeing this big bump up in prices for a completely different reason. That, of course, is on sort of more traditional measures of affordability, looking at, say, the price of a house, adjusting for these interest rates compared to incomes, a price of a house, adjusting for interest rates compared to rents. And what you see is a market which is at the greatest level of affordability literally in the last 40 years. It's not a big surprise that the market's starting to catch up. I think the only surprise is why did it take so long.
Chris, the Case-Shiller Price Index is a little bit of a lagging indicator. It accounts for prices back in February. The spring selling season is coming up. What are you expecting from that?
Well, keep something in mind. First of all, the Case-Shiller numbers today, the February, is actually a moving average of January, February, and March statistics. So it does encapsulate some March numbers. And in any case, if you look at other indices that do come out a little quicker, they all say the same thing. Prices are continuing to rise. The numbers we're looking at today are largely seasonally adjusted. The spring season is already sort of accounted for. But I think what you're asking me more broader is, where is this market going? Is it going to continue to grow? And the answer is absolutely. What you're seeing today is a couple things. First of all, investors are moving in a big way to take advantage of the gap between rents and home prices. A clear arbitrage play makes a lot of sense. At the same time, you have a lot of folks who are what you might want to call in the retail market suddenly starting to perk up and go, wait a minute, maybe this house is a good investment. You're starting to see a big shift in interest back towards buying homes. I think on that terms of that retail crowd, the only thing that's really holding them back at this point in time is a lack of credit.
Chris, just how much demand can investors account for in the housing market? Because we see a couple of things playing out. The refinancing cycle is near its end. Now, that's not necessarily going to influence home prices a lot, but we don't see unemployment dropping dramatically. We don't see the economy growing dramatically. So that would have to constrain retail demand to a certain degree. So that's why I wonder just how much can investors do to buoy housing prices?
Yeah, but you know, even an economy that's growing at kind of this moderate pace with this big carryover, this big sort of lag from where we were pre-recession, even in an economy which maybe isn't completely back on its feet, these home prices are just so low once you account for interest rates. You're looking at really an unprecedented degree of affordability. It's really more a function of confidence, not so much a function of the overall health of the economy, considering how cheap homes are
cheap. But Chris,
homes are cheap. As simple as that.
Look, if you look at the bank earnings, right,
Yeah.
for the first quarter, they'll show you that mortgage origination revenue is dropping off, which would suggest that not only a refinance is not happening, but new loans aren't happening.
Right.
People, if the interest rates are low, but people don't appear to be taking advantage of them.
Well, some are. Don't forget that all cash offers is a big thing out there, and then people turn around and sometimes refi them, sometimes they don't. But the all cash offer is a big driving force in the market today, in large part because, again, you got to move so fast to get those deals out there that an all cash offer will often trump other offers, even if the price is the same. But I think more significantly, what you're really talking about there is that those credit markets overall are still very constrained. If you look at what the regulators are doing, they're still really pushing the banks away from sort of rebuilding their real estate portfolios. A huge mistake on the part of this administration. This is an enormous opportunity for the middle class that was hurt so dramatically over this last downturn to get back some of that wealth by taking advantage of these historic low levels of prices.
Right.
Instead of working on pulling those regulators back, the market's constrained, and really it's only those folks who have the cash that are able to take advantage of this.
Chris, I need to ask you, what signs of speculation or overheating or bubble-like properties do you see in this housing market?
I don't see anything yet, again, because if you look at prices relative to incomes, prices relative to rents, they all say homes are underpriced at this particular point in time. Now, mind you, history shows us that periods of time when prices start to go up, even if it's based on fundamentals, can carry over into what I would call a bubble mode. But that bubble, if we end up in one, is at least 3 years out at the current pace of appreciation. So that's just not a concern in my eyes at this point in time.
Chris, 3 years from now, where would we be? If that pace of appreciation continued, I guess we could all start to do the math, but you've probably got a better idea. If we're really on an annualized 13% growth rate, or at least increase rate, where would we be 3 years from now relative to where we were in 2006?
We would be still a little bit below where we were in 2006, believe it or not, but getting very close. But to answer your question more, I think, substantially, if you ask me how far do prices have to go up to get back to normal levels of affordability, holding interest rates constant, you've got at least 35 to 40% headroom in terms of price appreciation before you get out of whack again. Now, mind you, if interest rates start drifting up, that calculation no longer holds true. But at least right now, you can see all the headroom.
Chris, we talk a lot about how we're entering a fourth year of this second half weakness, a spring break, a spring swoon. How does this trip up the housing market, given that housing has come a long way from the bottom?
Yeah, I don't really see this spring swoon, to be perfectly honest with you. Sure, March numbers were a little bit weaker than February, but that's only because February was on steroids. February, relative to January, was up way too high. We have to remember these are statistics based on small samples, and they jump around a bit. If you look at the March numbers relative to January, it suggests the U.S. economy is continuing to grow at this particular point in time. I think the only potential issue for that so-called spring swoon, of course, is going to wrap around what happens with sequestration and how big of an impact that has on the economy. So far, so good.
Help!
If an emergency happened right...
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about all those things he said. He said quite a few things. I took a few notes because I believe you need to hear what I'm thinking when he says some of these things. So the first thing I loved was that he actually connected the collapse in the credit standards with the housing price bubble. Most people don't even understand that when they stopped underwriting, when they stopped requiring honest payments for the money borrowed, the prices just rose astronomically. For $1,500 a month, you could borrow $400,000, $600,000, $1 million. Who wouldn't do that? And that, again, was the only loans offered. So these were the cheats that the banks did. So they intentionally bubbled the prices, and that directly bubbled the prices. If they had required, people to pay $6,500 a month if they're going to borrow $650,000, then, the prices wouldn't have gone up that high because normal people can't afford those payments. So that I agreed with. He the whole time they talked about why aren't buyers taking advantage of the low prices? Why are mortgage originations dropping off? Those kinds of comments, never once did they mention anybody on that show, on that video, about the facts that once an owner loses a house, whether it's a foreclosure, a deed in lieu, a short sale, they cannot borrow. They're not allowed to borrow from a normal lender. And the lending standards have now tightened. So they are locked out of a normal loan for 3 years. So if you just think about it, take your area, wherever you're living, and I'm going to take Sonoma County. We sell 4,500 to 5,000 homes a year. All you have to do is just probably Google, how many homes does my city sell or my area sell? And when you see that they sell 5,000 homes a year, then find out how many homeowners have lost their homes, in my county. And you see, for example, in Sonoma County, it's 15,000. So when you lock out all of those potential buyers, normally those are the homeowners. We've locked out the prime candidates for loans. We say, well, you can't borrow anymore. And that's I think it's mystifying the powers that be. They don't understand that the borrowers can't take advantage. Are you kidding me? They're screaming and crying at me all the time. I want to buy a house. I can't. I'm locked out. That's not fair. No, it's not. And it hurts the entire economy. That's why I've actually had solutions in the past for fixing real estate prices by saying, let's just do a moratorium. Let's just have FHA, the rules, and Fannie and Freddie say, okay, for the next 5 years, if you lose a house to short sale, foreclosure, deed in lieu, you can't buy for 6 months. And then you can. We would have such a flood of buyers coming in. They would balance out the cash purchases, and we would have a more stable price bottom. But right now, like he's talking about, there's investors coming in. It's cash. And then he's saying, well, it's cash that's pushing out the buyers. Well, yes and no. The fact of the matter is the only people that can buy with a loan are fairly weak. They're new first-time home buyers. All the other people that would normally buy, they're gone. We don't have those buyers. And that's the piece that's missing. And I'd like, whatever help you can be in sharing this information with other people. I think it's really important. And when they don't get it, then they can buy into, the kinds of results that this guy is saying. Now, notice, he said that it's just up all over. He's talking about a national market. Actually, it's really not. But that's okay. We're going to look at more numbers. I'm going to give you the links to all these articles so that you can look at the numbers yourselves and get more familiar with really how real estate markets work. Because the more people understand really how buying and selling and the supply and demand affects them, then the more sensible solutions we'll get around the country. Here's another. This is a little phrase. This is a little video about pending home sales are higher. Listen carefully, and then we're going to talk about it.
positive sign for the spring home selling season, but could it be better? Diana Olick has the details. Even better. Give it to us, Diana.
It could be, Mandy. Demand is there, supply is not, and that appears to be what is keeping sales less than robust in a usually busy spring season. Contracts signed to buy existing homes did rise 1.5% month to month, and they're up 7% from a year ago. Now, the realtors say sales are leveling off due to a lack of supply. Listings in March were down 17% from a year ago nationally, and the numbers are even more dramatic in some other markets. You can check out our Recovery Watch map on CNBC.com, but here are just a few. Listings are down 42% in Seattle year over year, down 22% in Dallas, 31% in Minneapolis, and down 30% year over year in Charlotte. Why? Well, several reasons. First, despite rising home prices, over 10 million or 22% of all properties with a mortgage were still in an underwater position at the end of 2012. That's according to CoreLogic. Now, add to that 11 million more that have less than 20% equity, which makes a move up buy pretty pricey.
The trade-up market, while doing better in some areas, is nowhere near what it used to be, because you still have people either who are underwater or even people who are no longer underwater. If you've only got your nose above the water, that ain't much for a down payment on a trade-up home.
That's right. Home prices in February were up over 7% annually, according to a new report from Lender Processing Services. And because of rising home prices, a lot of potential sellers who do have equity are waiting to see just how high those prices might go. Add to that, still pretty slow housing starts and a slowdown in foreclosures. And that's why there's just not much out there to buy. Mandy?
Thank you very much for that, Diana Olick. Let's bring in Tanya Macchio from Team Investments. How strong do you think the housing market?
I want to stop right there. That's good enough. We're just talking about the numbers. I wanted to point out that they're talking about listings being down, but they did. I love the fact that they brought out that right now 22%. This is nationwide. We know that in California it's 2 million loans that are upside down, approximately a little higher than that actually. But 22% of the mortgages being upside down. That means, as you well know, should know, you cannot sell, you cannot probably not refinance, and you're stuck. Those owners are stuck, and it wasn't their fault. They paid X, and now the value of that house is below X, so they're upside down, they're stuck, either in a high interest rate. They keep making their payments if they don't want to lose the house. If they listen to the liars, servicers who say, you want a loan mod, you have to stop your payments, then they end up in foreclosure, as we well know. And so those folks are not doing any sales unless it's short. And again, once you sell short, you can't buy. So this is classic. They're current on the payments. They're upside down. They want to move. The bank says you can't sell short without stopping your payments. And so they're forced into not being able to borrow and buy a new home. See what I mean? This is specific manipulation that really I find angering. It is completely unfair. It hurts basically the middle class, because they're the ones that own these homes. They're the ones that got suckered in. They're the ones that are losing all their down payments, plus now their credit, just simply if they need to sell or move. And then, like they pointed out, I did like this, that if your nose is just barely above water, there's no equity, there's no cash there to help you make a new down payment. And since these people have already lost their down payments, so many people I know used 401ks, they used college funds, they wanted to get into the house, it was going to be the last house, their kids were going to inherit, and then of course everything just blew up and fell apart on them. Now, they did mention the recovery map. So I have the recovery map. This is really cool. And you'll have this link here in a minute. So you can go anywhere, like in Des Moines. I just highlighted that little button. Sales are up 32% year over year. Prices are up 4.6%. Inventory is down 13%. Here, Portland, Oregon, sales and prices are up. Inventory is down. You can take your area and you can see that, well, oh gee, here's one in LA. Sales are actually down. Prices are up. Inventory is down. And when they say inventory, they're actually just, unfortunately, talking about a volume, just the sheer number. I would like to clarify that, because the fact of the matter is there's really a lot of inventory. There's just not cheap inventory. The homes typically that sell are those that are lower priced. It's a no-brainer, especially given all the pressures, basically that it's cash buyers and first-time home buyers are going to focus on the low prices in the market. That's just the way it's always worked, and it's no different now. And so I did want to point out here, I want to take just a minute and show you some numbers that I've actually calculated from about 15 counties in Northern California. I took Quattro, which is an MLS that combines data from many MLSs. By the way, just remember, there's not just one multiple listing service, not one MLS. Like in California, there's 83 MLSs. So a lot of times buyers and sellers don't even understand that. And so they own a property in, some other county. They walk into a local agent to say, I want to list that property. And so that listing never gets in the correct MLS. So people up there in that area can't find it. Just a quickie little aside on that one. So this is what I did on Monday based on that video. I went to the Quattro and I did not identify any counties. So this covers probably about 15 counties that really are the major focus of the listings in this combined MLS. And what I've done over here is I've got all of those that are active listed. That's 2,225. These are just homes, no condos, just homes, okay, in these counties. REO is real estate owned, meaning foreclosed. So they had 127 active foreclosures, which is 5.7% of that total. And shorts, these are people that have listed to sell short. They're listing for a price that's less than what they owe. Right now, there's 101 active shorts. But look at those that are pending. Pending means they've got an offer, they're in escrow, it's not yet closed. And this is what they were saying in that video, that pendings are up. And I have told the California Association of Realtors, I've argued with them, I argue with anybody that will, they take my email, but it doesn't mean they change to match what I'm saying, because I'm expressing to them this fact. So pay attention, then you'll know more than all these other people about how markets work. Right now, in escrow, we have 2,878 homes in these 15 counties. Notice they have quite a bit more of the foreclosures are in escrow, and look at the shorts. They have 36%, over 1,000 of these homes in escrow right now are short sales. So the fact of the matter is short sales don't close like normal sales. They can't. You're waiting for some bank negotiator and fake investor, my word fake, because they're constantly telling the agents on the other end saying, well, we have to talk to the investor. We have to get permission from the investor. That is such BS, because they don't have to. They just drag it out. Where have we heard that before? Making all these monies on all these late fees and all these billings that they can get. And many of them, and this is what I want to point out, many of them do not close. They go into foreclosure. So here's the best facts that I can create myself of how many shorts actually fall into foreclosure. So look at the solds. Notice this is from January 1 to April 29. So it's basically 4 months worth of sales. About 1,000 homes a month are selling right now, 1,019. Of these sales, the first 4 months of this year, 13% were foreclosures. So notice, and typically the foreclosures and short sales are priced at the bottom, and we'll look at that over here in the medians. It's real obvious. So the lower price properties are going into escrow. They're selling. Notice on shorts, only 841 actually closed these first 4 months. That's 20% of the sales. So what happened to these 16%? You see why I have objected to them counting pendings as future predictions of closes. And I've told them this over and over. They don't want to think about it. They just want to do what they've always been doing. And so the numbers get skewed because what the numbers are coming from is completely shifting of what it used to be. It used to be we never had shorts. Are you kidding? Everything was a normal sale. A few foreclosures. I mean, you could count them on one hand in the 9 counties, I'm sure. So now when you've got 33%, 34% of the sales these first 4 months in these 15 counties in Northern California are actually distressed, you can see the what they're counting has shifted, but they're not changing their formulas. And so this is what I wanted to point out. So far this year, they've sold about 1,000 a month. But last year, when I took these same counties and I just said, okay, how many home sales did you have last year and divided by 12? They sold on the average monthly 1,352. That was a 25% decline in volume, just sheer numbers. How many homes are selling? We have a decline in volume. We've got cash investors coming in. Chances are, in my opinion, probably 100% of these, probably all of these REOs were cash. It's just that's the way it works. I haven't looked. I could look, but the issue is the cash flows in at the bottom, which pushes out first-time home buyers because they have to have a loan. And so now I just wanted to bring your attention to the medians. Over here, these are actives now. And so if I exclude REOs and short sale valuations, the median price of the active homes in these 15 counties right now is $725,000. That's way above statewide median. I mean, that's expensive. That's a very expensive home. If you look at the medians of the foreclosures, they're just under $300,000, and that is basically affordable. It's about $1,800 a month, principal and interest right now. If on an FHA. So if you had conventional, more down payment, that would be a little less. And then short sales, see how they teaser the prices? They have to keep teasing the prices because a short sale will take anywhere from 3 months to 2 years to close. That's another reason you have such a high number over here in escrow. They just drag and drag and drag and drag and drag. So then on medians in the pending category, notice how the homes that are going into escrow, that median is $435,000, not counting REOs and shorts. So the higher end properties are sitting out there, waiting, waiting, waiting. And as you would expect, at some point in time, if that owner can't keep making those payments, it drops in value, eventually sells short. So this is still pulling equity out of the market because the upper end is losing. The lower end is not being listed. Notice normally, like last year, these REO numbers were doubled, and the year before that, they were 4 times these numbers. It was common to have 50% of the listings being foreclosures in county after county after county. And of course, they're all priced below median. So notice from active, pending is 239, but when they actually closed, you've got 257. The foreclosures close at the cheapest price, median price, which means median, by the way, half the sales are above and half are below. It's not an average, it's a median, it's the midpoint. So half of them are below and half are above. So when you have median up here, that means that there's a lot of higher sales because half of them are above. If you have median down here, it means a real heavy portion of the properties are listed at lower numbers. I just wanted to share that with you. I find that pretty interesting. I find this is a better predictor of future prices than just pendings, because we have no way to predict if those shorts will close or not. The banks could change their mind. They could say, we're not going to close any more short sales for the rest of the year. And they wouldn't tell us. You kidding? They just let these drag. They'd let these drag out and out and out. So everybody else listing short, that just balloons that number. And of course, all these talking heads just say, oh, gee, pendings are up. Sales must be up. And then, a month later they go, oh, sales are down. Whoops. And it's like they don't understand. It's a disconnect of reality and then the talking heads. So just wanted to pass that on by you. And I do want to give you some other numbered real estate sites. So here's a good one. This talks about home ownership as hits 17-year low. And that's because all the borrowers, all the owners that lost their homes to foreclosure in the last 3.5 years, basically, because once you lose the home, it takes 3 years before you qualify. Chances are lots of these people lost jobs and lost income, so they have to resave for down payments. They have to, so it's not like at the end of 3 years, boom, they're back in the market. Some will be, some won't. But that's another issue. Remember the article I showed a while back? The estimate is only 1 in 10 that owned a house will own again. And this is the statement of affairs in this country. Here's an article, and this article, of course, is just trumpeting bad news. U.S. real estate market in free fall. You can read it. Here's the point. None of these are actually completely accurate for your area. They're not going to be accurate for my area. They're taking national numbers and they're making national statements and predictions, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to match where you and I each live. So let's see. Here's the housing market accelerates. Now I like this little site. I wanted to show it to you because you can shift here. Trouble spots, bright spots. I'm going to click these buttons and watch these numbers move. And what's going to happen is that the different areas are going to change down here. So pay attention. Right now this is in trouble spots and they're talking about past due loans in comparison. And then they talk about the home value index. And so these are the troubled areas over here. The Midwest, the South, and Jacksonville, the Northeast. So as you click on these, this tells you more accurately what your area might be like. Because if he says it's all up or it's all down, no, it's not. Some are up, some are down. And some areas are going to be better off right within your county. Some cities are going to do better. Some cities are going to do worse. Some counties better, counties worse. So this is a real interesting little chart I wanted to share with you. So let's look at bright spots. So now bright spots, again, they've got past due loans, then they've got the home value index, and of course they're colored according to where they are. So you look at Phoenix, for example. Well, Phoenix has the most past due loans and the lowest home value index. And so these are bright spots. So you got Denver, San Diego, San Francisco, Sacramento. And you can determine yourself by looking at these if you think they're bright or troubled. I think personally that real estate is really been ruined, and it's not going to get any better until we get federal funding out, we start doing local funding with public bank credit, and people start making their payments to the public bank so that the whole community can benefit from the effort of the community. Anyway, here's low listings. So these are the areas where they're talking about listing supply being low. And so we're talking Sacramento, Denver, Seattle, LA, Orange County. But what's fascinating, that other article just said that LA, remember on that map, that LA had low listings, but they also had falling prices. So nothing is really consistent. And this is the point. You need to understand that no matter what somebody says, they've been taking statistics, a few of them, and making a conclusion. And it's not going to necessarily apply to your house, to your area, to that price point. Because we've got houses literally right now. I did, just yesterday, I did a search on the MLS for all prices, all homes in these 15 counties priced below $100,000. And we're talking, wealthy Northern California counties. And I came up with 39 homes. 2 years ago, I came up with 500. So the issue is it does change. In some ways it's getting better, in other ways it's worse. It's shifting, and the worst part about all of it is I see banks and bank decisions everywhere. It's bank hedge funds, they're backing hedge funds coming in as cash buyers. It's bank negotiators doing short sales. It's bank lenders doing decisions on making loans. So you've got the bank on the sell side, the bank on the buy side, the bank on making all the bank on ownership, the foreclosures, those are all bank owned properties. They use asset managers to sell them, but it's still bank decisions. And that is one of the major problems. If anything, I would try to figure out how to get banks out of the middle of our houses. There's no way that housing is going to ever be a right or realistic and stable when we've got banks involved. Couple of other websites I wanted to show. I got to move on. I'm sorry, I'm taking too long. Here's another little article talking about the home equity credit quality is likely to worsen. Home equity now is the second loans. It's not the primary purchase loans, but typically these are called HELOCs, home equity lines of credit. And HELOCs have taken a huge hit. Virtually every one of them have lost any kind of collateral because the house price fell below the value of the second. And at that point, the judge can wipe the second off if you go into bankruptcy court. So HELOCs and home equity quality is likely to worsen, no doubt. I just had to show this. It just drives me bananas because LPS, this is Lender Processing Services, this is the entity that, had a settlement with DocX and forged foreclosure documents, but they have used all of this fraudulently gained money, and now they go into the graphs and all of the documents, and they're supplying all this information to all the banks and all the people. They have taken positions in the industry that used to be up to private individuals and companies. And you can look at what they say. I have no doubt what they're saying is accurate. It just drives me crazy that these banks have used ill-gotten gains to game our system and take our business. That's what they're doing right here. They're taking the business. So, Fannie and Freddie, next topic, privatizing. The powers that be, the federal Congress, our elected representatives are trying to figure out what we're supposed to do with Fannie and Freddie. You know that FHFA now is in conservatorship over Fannie and Freddie. And what I'm talking about here real quickly, 1, 2, 3, I got 3 little articles. The hedge fund lobby proposes to privatize. Of course they do. Privatize Fannie and Freddie, but I want you to recognize right here, the very next paragraph, this is a very important article that you get comfortable with. They want to privatize, except not really, because the devil's in the details. This is privatization in name only, since the Treasury would need to give up the $20 billion in dividends that taxpayers now receive annually. The Treasury would need to maintain Fannie and Freddie, they're called government-sponsored enterprises, GSEs, their virtual monopoly of the conventional mortgage market for the foreseeable future, and they would have to continue the government's guarantee of these privatized companies. Then why would we do that? Why would we do that? Because the hedge fund lobby is going to buy them off to do this. We're seeing this right in action. Make no mistake. This is exactly what they're trying to do. Let me share with you who's doing this. Paulson. John Paulson. Paulson and Company is leading the hedge fund lobby. And what they're doing is buying up Fannie and Freddie stock at pennies. And then they're going to pay off, they're going to bribe the regulators and the Congress people to go ahead and do this new privatization where basically they get all the profits, you and I get all the risk. And here's the next article. This is typical. This happens to be Freddie Mac announces their first multifamily seniors securities offering. They're still making securities fast and furious. And of course, I thought they were supposed to be wound down by the FHFA, but they just do new securitizations month after month after month. They're getting more and more investors and mortgage-backed securities on these loans. They're ramping it up fast and furious. And this is the key here again in this article. I highlighted it right now so you can see it. The KSO1 certificates are backed by 27 multifamily mortgages and are guaranteed by Freddie Mac. Okay, and then you got to look down here. This next paragraph. We're very proud to announce our first K deal backed entirely by senior housing loans, blah, 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 blah. Freddie Mac Multifamily is expanding securitization series while bringing liquidity to the market, blah, 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 and selling a substantial portion of the risk to private investors through the K deal structure. So would someone please email me and explain this? I am confused. It says here that they're selling a substantial portion of the risks to private investors, except they're guaranteed by Freddie Mac. So how do you sell substantial risk when you've got a guarantee? Can someone explain that to me? Because I'm sorry, I'm just a simple real estate broker. I just don't get it. I really don't get it. Okay, Fed. Moving on, the Federal Reserve. Well, they're saying that the chances are, if we'll get growth, 50-50. That's a little bit scarily honest. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And so they're saying, okay, maybe, maybe not. Just so that you're aware that actually people that are being listened to by the mainstream media are being a little more honest than what we'd actually expected. Here's another article. The Fed may be a little downbeat in light of recent data that suggests the economy may be repeating the same spring and summer dip experienced over the last 2 years. And I want to tell you, I personally feel that as far as properties going into escrow, I feel that it's been a little bit of a slowdown. There's more properties that are waiting longer on the market. I look at properties every day. That's just in my little area, but that's just my feedback. And what to expect from the Fed today? Well, they're expected to stick with the current easy money policy path. And there's supposed to be an official statement today around 2 o'clock. So by the end of the show, maybe in 4 minutes, we might hear what the Fed's going to say. And they're probably going to just continue buying $85 billion in Treasury debt and mortgage-backed securities. My understanding, it's 40 of the debt and 45 MBS. And they're just going to keep doing that, ballooning their holdings. You know, it's now, what, $3 trillion? And didn't we talk about on Monday about, Republicans and Democrats on the Hill, they want to know, okay, how's the Fed going to wind down this portfolio? How are you going to exit those holdings without, like, crashing the economy? And, of course, the Fed's not saying, because the Fed can't. We're at least honest enough here. So there you go with the Fed. Oh, and here's one last article. The Fed is destroying jobs. This was published yesterday, and this is a head of a Chicago-based hedge fund. He's not pleased with Bernanke because basically the low interest rates that they're maintaining, virtually zero, is causing companies to take their cash and look for other things to invest in that will help increase worker productivity, and it makes workers very expensive. So let's get rid of them. Besides, they got healthcare. We don't want that. Let's buy more robots. And that is basically, the low interest rates have encouraged business to invest in technology that reduces the demand for human labor. And he's absolutely right. And I would add to that it causes cash to look at real estate. So when the interest rates start to rise, cash is going to stop flowing into real estate so heavily, because now, CDs and other things will look better. And that's another potential thing that could be risky for real estate prices, since right now 30% or more of the transactions nationwide, this is a nationwide fact. Remember, 1/3 of the houses in March around the entire country were purchased with all cash. That's a little scary. So let's now quick zip through the banks, their lawsuits and stuff. B of A wants to toss their $1 billion faulty mortgage suit, and it hasn't been tossed yet, so that's a good thing. Here's a settlement from Moody's and S&P, Morgan Stanley, just $225 million. Okay, we lied on our ratings. We told you they were good loans. They weren't. We made billions of bucks. And okay, slap on the hand. We'll pay you the lying tax. This is a lie tax. They're still in business. They're not in prison for criminal enterprise and fraudulent information. They just get to, get the company to pay, and the CEOs keep operating. And then this is a good thing. MBIA, that's an insurance company, is suing Countrywide, and they tried to get a pretrial ruling against Bank of America. In other words, it'll be done. B of A has breached and its obligations to buy back the loans, and MBIA would win. Well, the judge didn't let that happen, but as you look down in the article, it's going to be very, very difficult for B of A to win, and that's a good thing. Hold them accountable, feet to the fire, keep up the pressure. Now, this is really, really critical. This is something that Ellen Brown wrote. This was posted on yesterday, April 30. Bailout is out, bail-in is in. And this clearly explains the facts that we've been talking about. This is very important. You take this link and send it to everybody you know, because this is the Cyprus alarm bells. And we need to understand that this is going to be what we all face. She also points out in the article, and you can read it and look at it, and that is, you may think that your money is in a community bank. You may think that it's in some IRA, in some non-mega bank, and yet those banks have interdepository agreements with mega banks. And so what you think is safe may not be safe, because every account in these banks is subject to seizure 100%. And trust me, she actually talks earlier about the FDIC going broke. So don't think that because you're in a bank and you're under the $250,000 FDIC limit, you're going to be protected. If the FDIC goes broke and the banks demand the bail-in, that money's gone. So let's be smart about this, and let's really look at where our accounts are. If you've got an IRA, if you have a 401k, where is that being held? I don't care which company. Find out where that company has your account. And let's look through, each one of us, look through our assets and start to get prepared, because, of course, it will be seized. They will be seized. Now, what I wanted to focus on what Ellen is talking about that we can do to change this, to protect ourselves. And she says, first off, to protect them, we have to repeal the super priority status of derivatives. Well, that's a no-brainer, except that's going to be a real hard fight, because right now derivatives have super priority status. Remember, I talked about that, where if there's any problem on the super derivative side, and we know that there's like hundreds of trillions or quadrillions of these derivatives floating around the world, they will take the deposits first, because that comes before all secured, unsecured assets of any kind. They have super priority, so we have to repeal that. Another thing she says is to have a separate depository banking from investment banking, to separate those, yes. Repeal the Commodity Futures Modernization Act of 2000, that put them together, and reinstate Glass-Steagall. So we need to pull apart, again, loans and investment banking, because obviously it's going to ruin the planet if we don't. And then we need to protect both public and private revenues by establishing a network of public-owned banks on the model of the Bank of North Dakota. Let me remind you, all of the accounts of your county and city, where are they? When they take the accounts, they're not going to take just yours. They're going to take your city's accounts, your county's accounts, and it is imperative that you and I, in fact, Mark, Public Banking, mentioned to me just in passing on the phone that we need to possibly file some legal action, because otherwise, how do you get these people to listen to you and move? So let's file legal action for fiduciary duty to remove the accounts from this risk. You know, they must establish a public bank and get the accounts in the public bank so they can't be stolen by the mega banks on the super priority status of the derivatives. So let's mull that over. Let's think about that, because I think that would be a very good action, and I think we really need to consider it. Now, in Iceland, I just really wanted to brief you what's happening in Iceland. And here's a little video. You can play it. I'm not going to take the time right now to play it. It talks, though, because I got a couple articles. You can listen to it. It's cool. It's interesting. And what's actually happening is that the government that steered Iceland out of the crisis is getting voted out. And the lesson we can learn is that what they basically have done, they steered them out of the crisis, but they haven't gone far enough. And so the other party has come in and said, we're going to go far enough, and this is what they're going to do. And so, of course, they're getting the vote. And here's the party that wants to write off 20% of the household mortgages. So the fact of the matter is, when you read through these articles and when you listen, you're going to discover that their interest rates were connected to inflation. They're adjusted for inflation. They're not on LIBOR. They're not on the 12th district cost of funds or whatever, like so many of our adjustable mortgages are, which of course were cheated since they were connected to LIBOR. And then we know now that the LIBOR, the banks have been manipulating LIBOR probably since the 90s. That's my guess. But nevertheless, theirs are connected to inflation, and so their principals have been massively rising, and the people can't pay. They're losing their homes. They're just debt loaded. So it's everywhere. Something is happening everywhere. And I wanted to share with you now as we move into what can we do. This is a cool article written by Tim Nawn. He's with Occupy Petaluma, and he's written an article called Moral Courage, Immoral Silence. And I challenge everyone that views this to take this article to their church, print it up, because he's basically saying, he's been a preacher, not right now, but he and the Archbishop King has said the same thing to me. Why aren't the ministers railing in the pulpit about the fraud and the corruption and helping their congregations fight back? Many churches have lost the church because of foreclosure fraud. Many in their congregations have lost their homes. So I'm going to recommend that you at least challenge your minister, the preachers in your city, even if you don't go to that church. What's to keep you from printing this article and mailing it out to them? I'm thinking I might do that. I'll just print it and send it in the mail. Take it around. Hand it to the preachers. Hand it to the staff. Say, look, the righteous must speak out, because we all know that evil abounds when good men do nothing. And we're good people. So we need to do something. So here's an article that might help you do something. I wanted to share with you quickly the rise of the new economy movement. This was now printed 1 year ago. 1 year ago, and I just got it yesterday. And it's a great summary. It summarizes all of the different things that are happening. I wanted to just read this little paragraph. You can read the rest of it yourself on your own time. But thousands of real-world projects, from solar power businesses to worker-owned co-ops and state-owned banks, are underway across the country. Many are self-consciously understood as attempts to develop working prototypes in state and local laboratories of democracy that may be applied at regional and national scale when the right political moment occurs. This movement includes young and old, Occupy people, student activists, and what one older participant describes as thousands of people in their 60s from the 60s. That's me. Rolling up their sleeves to apply some of the lessons of an earlier movement. And again, if we don't do this, our kids suffer. It is a no-brainer. We must work together on this. And this is a powerful range of activities that we've been talking about. It's not just fighting foreclosures and stopping fraud, which is a symptom of the problem, but it's getting the control back to the local level. From centralization back to decentralization, back to local control and level. One thing I wanted to share with you quickly, and then I've got 2 new ideas and 3 stories, but I have actually now gotten my 18 foreclosure doc worksheets linked to this. This is the little presentation I did on March 11 to the Attorney General about the Recon Trust document violations. And I've now got those 18 foreclosure doc worksheets. They look like this. Each sheet is, I've spread that out. Up here in this corner, I've got the violations. Here is the link to the different PSAs and the suspicious signatures on my website. And here's the list. I've done basically the worksheet analysis for each of these 18 foreclosures. I've sent it to the Attorney General. I asked them to start a statewide grand jury, to impanel a statewide grand jury to get an injunction against Recon Trust. I have not yet gotten feedback as to why they haven't started and what else they need. And so I'm asking you to please support my effort. If you've got suspicious documents, send them to the Attorney General's office. Call the Attorney General's office and say, in California, this is California statewide grand jury. This is the Homeowner Bill of Rights, SB 1474, which is linked on my website on Legal Action by State, and it is about the statewide grand jury. And the Attorney General can impanel a grand jury for criminal charges, and it will work in conjunction with your county grand jury. So I'm recommending that all of us start to push for local county grand juries who also put the pressure on the Attorney General for a statewide grand jury. I see no other way to get any criminal charges started against these fraudulent people. Matt Taibbi talks about it. It is rampant. They're not talking about all the foreclosure or all the loan fraud in the underwriting, and yet nothing seems to be done about it. And we have to get something done about it. We have to get somebody to start criminal charges against these people. That is, if we don't get criminal charges against this, our law and order is over. If we get criminal charges in this, then we can use that to start refixing our judicial system. But if the people don't get justice, that is really, really scary and dangerous. So this is really, really important. Even if you're not fighting foreclosure, even if you've lost your home already, the facts are these. If we don't stop the criminals from filing and getting away with it, forged documents on our recorder's office, if we allow this to continue and not put somebody in prison for this, and a whole lot of somebodies, I believe that this is really, really very, very bad. So that's, I just want to say that. And I believe it's really imperative that we start filing lawsuits, whatever we can, perhaps against our elected officials if they're not following the law. Somebody suggested that yesterday. I don't have a clear understanding yet of what that might entail or how that might look. So I'm not going to talk about it today, but I am going to tell you 2 ideas. 2 new ideas have come to my attention just yesterday. One was get your passport. Get a passport. Get it now while you still can, and get it for the 10 years so that you can leave the country if you must. So that hit me really hard. here's what they look like. Here's a passport application. I'm working on mine and my family's. And you get them from the post office. And, you know, you can fill it out. You set up an appointment. You go in and give them the filled out document with the proof of your birth certificate and the picture. And then they send it in, and it takes about 6 weeks. So start now. Get your passport. The second thing is, this came from an attorney who's a foreclosure defense attorney, just losing and losing in California. It's very, very difficult in California to get a win. And her idea was, you know, California does have state initiatives. And my first objection, I'm saying, oh, it takes too much money to get the 1 million signatures. And she says, no, it won't. Not if we position this correctly. And her initiative is to make it illegal that instantly, if they file forged documents, they would go to prison, something like that, at the recorder's office, something really strong and powerful for you and I don't have to take them to court and try to work with some judge who's already corrupted and bought off to get justice. And so I've asked her to pursue this idea. I've asked her to find out what that would be, what we could do, and then this would be something we could really get behind, a statewide initiative. If we can't get our legislators to pass the law that we need, then let's do an initiative process. So this is something that I think is pretty powerful, depending on how it rolls out, but it is long term. This is not going to happen tomorrow. And so this is one of the longer term efforts, but I wanted to get it out there so that you can think about it. And again, I've put in my resolution for the statewide grand jury. I'm working on drafting a resolution. I want to keep it on a single page of, because of this, and this, you, whomever you is, supports this resolution, and the resolution would be that the Attorney General would impanel a statewide grand jury to investigate this fraud. And I'm recommending that we go to our supervisors at the county level to get this resolution supported, that we go to the recorder's office and get the recorder to support the resolution, that you get our DAs to support the resolution, that we get the Democratic Central Committee to support the resolution. Hey, go to the Republican Central Committee. See if you can get somebody there to listen to Law and Order to support this resolution. Because again, the point is, we know they have been filing forged documents. If we don't get justice, if we don't stop this practice as a country, as a nation, I don't care what initial you have after your name, RDIP, it's immaterial. We'll all be slaves. We'll all have lost our birthright in this country. This is very important. And then the 3 stories I wanted to share. One is from Tunisia, one is from Russia, and one is from a former Federal Reserve person that worked at the Federal Reserve. And while I share that, I want to put this up on the screen so that you have time to look at it, because I'm pushing this for the Public Banking Conference. It's going to be held in San Rafael. Matt Taibbi, Ellen Brown, and Iceland Parliament member Birgitta Jónsdóttir is going to be speaking. I apologize if I said the name wrong. They're all speakers and workshop presenters at the Public Banking Conference. So please try to make arrangements to come. It's going to be held in San Rafael at the Dominican University. Here's the address. Maybe you could stay with friends. If you can get in at all to watch even part of it, it'd be great. And I will be there every day helping move along the information and sharing on live stream what's going on. And so while you're looking at that, I wanted to share the 3 stories. Shelley, who went to Tunisia, she shared with us about, that was the social forum, and they had 50,000 people attending there. And she talked a couple of Fridays ago about all of the different housing issues around the planet, how this is just with everybody. It's not just the United States. She shared with me on Saturday that one of the workshops she attended was a banking workshop. And she said that, they were talking about issues, and she mentioned that she was from the United States and that there is a movement in public banking in the United States. And they were thrilled. They had no idea that the people in this country were moving forward and trying to fight back against what they see as the United States. You got to understand, they don't see you and me. they see these other jerks. I apologize. Really pisses me off, and it makes me sad, because you and I, we care so much about the people, and yet we have such a bad name around the country, around the planet. So I'm really excited because they're connecting with public banking here. And remember, there's that interview we heard about the central banks and how they're trying to actually separate the creation of fiat credit from banking. They're trying to get our system back under control. So we need to connect with everybody around the world. Okay, the next story. Yesterday, a lady approached me and needed a transportation to the emergency room. So of course I'm going to take her. It was in Santa Rosa, and she's from Russia, and she's been living here for a long time. But she sees what is actually happening. And she said, again, almost the same thing that others from Russia, Romania, other states, countries like that, that we think we have been taught to believe are horrible and just so oppressed. And she's telling me that this country is so much more corrupt than Russia, that it's 10 times harder to get a job and live here and make a living than in these other countries. That if she could, she would go back to Russia because she has more freedom. This is why we got to understand we've been frogs in the pot, and they've gradually made it tougher and tougher and tougher. We're all feeling it. So let's recognize that this is where we're at. And thank you so much for joining us and helping to fight back. And then the last one, the former Federal Reserve guy. Wow. This was a connection again from Shelley. She said that her hairdresser had a little party, and so everybody, that she was doing hairdressing for went to the little party, and Shelley went. And the husband of one of these ladies got to talking with Shelley, and turns out that he used to work at the Federal Reserve. And he said, we have a house in this area. It's Fountain Grove, which is a very upper scale. They're generally $800,000 to $2 million homes. And they're selling out, and they're getting out of the country. They're moving on, and now's the time to go. So this is pretty dramatic. These things really do affect me. And I thank you so much for your support and your encouragement and your effort. So let's hit our supervisors, our elected officials. Let's join and connect with anyone we can find around the planet that wants to help and is working for freedom and the 99% getting back in control. Thanks, guys. I know we've run a little long. We had a lot to catch up on, and we'll be seeing you tomorrow. And as usual, we want to, again, encourage everyone you know and yourself to bugger all the bankers, the politicians, and the bureaucrats, too. See you tomorrow.
When I was a lass, I was proud of me class, like my father and mother before me. They taught me to fight for my civil rights, but it's always the same old story. The rich reign supreme while the poor can but dream, and the labor or liberal or Tory. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, and if you're one of them, bugger you, and if you're one of them, bugger
The system is bent and the money's all spent. We're measured from every direction. The workers get taxed while the wealthy relax.
with nary a moment's reflection. Where there's brass, there's muck, and they don't give an arse, 'cause they're programmed against insurrection. And I say, bugger the bankers and politicians, bugger the bureaucrats too, bugger the buggers who make up the rules, give up the struggle for justice. But I've done my time on the protesters' line, and these days I show my dissent.